Hello and welcome to a special Comics Pals interview. I am your host, Sean, but I'm joined this time by someone who, remarkably, we've actually never had on the show before, but I have ties to over the years. We have an artist who has collaborated with Dirk Manning, who you guys know very well if you listen to this podcast. We are talking to artist behind Nightmare World. We're talking about artists behind Tales of Mystery. We're talking about an artist behind Butts and Seats, the Tony Schiavone story. We are talking about the man whose Kickstarter was funded in no more than 3 hours. We are talking about... Sorry?
A little less than three.
Little less than 3 hours. Left Turn's creator, Joshua Ross. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, you probably don't remember this. That's totally okay. We actually met many years ago. I think it was at Special Edition Comic-Con.
I do remember that. Dirk actually brought it up, and I was pretty sure we had met before. So, yep, I do remember that. So.
Absolutely. And at that point, I mean, gosh, that was 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
At that point, you were already, a very locked-in collaborator with Dirk Manning.
We've been, almost 20 years.
Wow, right, because Nightmare World, when you guys first started with that, I mean, that was almost 20 years ago at this point.
Yep, yeah.
So, obviously, that's a long period of time. You're finally putting out your first Kickstarter book, Left Turns. This is your first Kickstarter, correct?
This is my first Kickstarter, yes.
So Left Turns is a book that seems to be, sort of autobiographical, but I'm assuming you took creative liberties and licenses. Know.
It's I mean, you get me rambling about that, it turns into like a 15-minute answer. Yes, it is loosely inspired by my life, I would say. Like Dirk likes to call it creative nonfiction. It's definitely not autobiographical at all, but it definitely takes situations and elements that I have gone through. There are definitely bullet points of yes, this is a situation where I moved in with my brother, and yes, I, had an ex-girlfriend that we'd been together that broke up. And, the core tent poles, I guess, are somewhat accurate, but the core story is completely fictional. Every character, none of the friends in the book are based on any real people. Just, I mean, the more I worked on it, the more I strayed away from it being my story, and at the same time, the more it became my story, because I definitely threw in things that I like. It's like, oh, the bookshelves are going to be covered with, you're going to see statues of things that I like. You're going to see Tron or, Hellboy or images. There's definitely me in it. But yes, I don't know exactly. It's a 50-50 kind of thing.
That's a really interesting answer, because I think most people would assume that a creator who has the capacity to tell their own story, because obviously everyone in life has a story. Everybody's life is a story. But not all of us are equipped to tell that story in a way that would appeal to a viewer or a listener or a consumer of entertainment. So you chose to tell your story, but not tell your story. And I'm wondering why you would stray from the path of your own life and kind of, add and tweak and sort of do different things with it.
I guess, I mean, I wrote this rough plot, 17, 18 years ago, like a 2-page, just kind of like loose thumbnail, in a situation where I'd had a longtime girlfriend that had broken up with me. I moved in with my brother. I had met another girl at that time that we had a summer romance kind of thing that, it felt like fate and we were destined. And so I wrote this whole plot, and it basically was just a timeline of every girl I'd ever crushed on, liked, friend zoned, anything. It was just almost a timeline of stuff. And I was like, someday I'm going to tell the story, because we can all relate to heartache and romance and whatever level. And then so it's kind of just sat there for 17 years. And since then, that girl and I were no longer together. I have now met my wife, and life went in completely different paths. Those pieces of paper got shoved someplace on a bookshelf, and I came across them about a month or two prior to COVID. And when that hit, I knew I was going to be stuck at home for a while. And I'm the kind of person that's like, I'm not going to waste a month or more just sitting around. I need to do something. So I was going to learn how to program or make music or paint or something. And I found that script, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a comic book, because I've been wanting to do a personal book for 20 years. I haven't done an individual comic book basically since I've met Dirk. Wow. I did some back in college, back when I was a teenager. I've got a bunch of random personal projects, but so I just kind of started drawing. I just was like, I've got this. I'm just going to go. And I think I spent roughly a week letting my brother and Dirk Manning kind of read that script and make sure it felt like it was like it had a point, and like a plot. Like there was a beginning, middle, and end. Maybe it was rough. And I just started drawing, and I don't know why I didn't tell my story, but I thought it allowed me to just kind of tell a story if I didn't tell mine. Because we all have our things, and if I told my story, it probably would have been a 1,000-page story of just people sitting around not doing much but jobs and ups and downs. And so I think it just, to kind of stay focused, it was almost easier to like make something up, but just take plot points of elements of my life and just focus it into a more cohesive story. Because then I don't have to, I don't know, it's kind of that weird answer. Just, it's personal, but it's not. And it allowed me to focus on just telling a good story and not worrying about being an autobiography. Because, I love slice of life things like Jeffrey Brown and Optic Nerve and stuff like that are really just almost like a borderline journal of my life. Here's a relationship. Here's the beginning, middle, and end. But it doesn't really tell a story. It's just like moments. Right. And this turned into a story. So it kind of wasn't that raw, and it wasn't that personal. It just, the more I kept working on it, I wanted to make sure it felt like there was an ending. It felt more cohesive. So I think that's why I strayed away from it being like me, I guess. I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense. And I would imagine that it's harder to, you're obviously in your life, but you're not out of your life. So it's hard to be objective about certain things and, be able to look at things from a perspective that makes a good story. So I think it makes sense to kind of like, here are the things that I need to say in this story, and then kind of fill in the blanks with, things.
That's when it was like taking those moments where like, okay, I'm telling a story of boy meets girl, girl leaves girl, and just other relationships. Like, there's friends in different moments. And that was one of the things Dirk was a good help, because we've been friends basically the whole timeline of this story. So he was able to go, yes, you're telling your story, but what is going to make a good story? So he kind of helped pull me out of that at times too. And, like, yes, this is personal to you, but chop off these 5 pages because they don't push the story forward, kind of thing. And actually when I hired Drina Joe earlier in the year as an editor, because I've never met her, we have no personal relationship other than just loose connections with Dirk. It was really nice to have an outsider read the story and go, chop, 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 get rid of this. This doesn't make sense. Focus on this, and to make it a good story, not just a slice of life story.
Right. So it's worth pointing out, by the way, this is a 365 pager, which I love the number. That's a lot of meat. So if you back this Kickstarter, which it is at this point fully funded. I think when I looked, it was double the congratulations, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
365 pages. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck, and I think a lot of times, you back a Kickstarter, and sometimes you get back whatever it is, and it's like, well, gosh, for this amount of money, I would have appreciated a little bit more content, and you're really not skimming. What's the process been like for you working on something so gargantuan?
It was very, very organic, because I went into this with basically a 2-page plot, and I didn't have a script. I kind of made it up as I went. I definitely don't advise taking my route doing this book. I think I made an Instagram post when I found the script and I said I was going to start drawing it. And my plan was maybe 150 pages. And it just kept going. But because I didn't have a script, I just started drawing. And I felt like if I could tell a story without dialogue and you could kind of capture the emotions and the scenes, that it's a halfway decent story.
Sure.
So I drew the whole thing without writing a single word balloon. It was, and I probably drew close to 400 pages, and that's where like Drina kind of cut out some flat, I had like flashback scene of like kindergarten, and that was a fairly personal story of like kindergarten crush stuff, and she's like, well, this doesn't push the story. You don't need to see kindergarten romance. You don't need to see some high school stuff. These random flashback scenes that were kind of weren't moving the story forward. So she chopped a decent amount of those kind of scenes out. But I just started drawing. I just was like, okay, what do friends do? They go to a diner. Let's draw 8 pages of people sitting in a diner. And I just almost like a silent film. Like, okay, this person's taking a drink, and this person's talking to the next person, and this person's laughing, and then it was like, okay, it goes to the next scene, and here's a sad scene, and here he is being contemplative, sitting at his computer, and I don't know. So I just kind of drew it as a silent book, and then when it was done, then I sat down and started writing my dialogue on top of it. And at that point, I did make a handful of, maybe I need to change an expression, maybe I need to move 2 panels around, maybe I need to flip 1 or 2 things, but I definitely didn't go about it in a standard kind of route. But yeah, it just kept going. It just kept flowing. Before I knew it, 100 pages turned into 200 pages, and I hadn't even gotten to the point that I wanted to tell like who the main characters were, or the flashback scenes or whatever. It just, I don't know. At some point, I had to wrap it up, or it would have turned into 500 or 600 pages. I think it's a very solid beginning, middle, end. Everything kind of makes sense. Like it all ties together. It feels like a very complete story now.
Well, you talk about an unconventional way of making a comic book, and I think it's so awesome that there are, you are among a rare group of people who can sort of produce a comic alone. And that's standing within the space of, the Frank Millers of the world, the Daniel Warren Johnsons of the world. That is a rare talent, but you also have a 20-year pedigree. So it's kind of fun to me, the idea that a veteran of the industry who has so much talent is saying, you know what, I'm just going to see what happens. And Left Turns is the result of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty much, Yeah, I definitely did some stuff back in college, but, 20 pages, 30, 40-page stories. Most of the Dirk Manning stuff is a random 8-page stories that get collected. Even the Mr. Ree's 100 and something pages, but it was 13 8-page stories. So it's the first time I've done like a consecutive, like more than 20 pages, one story kind of thing in, ever. But, yeah, I don't know. I knew if I didn't start drawing, if I would have wasted a month or, the COVID shut down 3 months writing the story, I don't know if I would have ever started drawing it. I might have spent 3 months trying to write it, trying to make sure the script was perfect, all that kind of stuff. But once I started drawing, it was hard to stop. Like I'd gotten 30 pages, and 30 pages is going to turn into 60 pages. And before you know it, you hit 100. And I go, if I can't quit now because I've already drawn 100 pages. I can't throw those away. And yeah, I spent pretty much almost every day for 2 years drawing a page or more. And turned into Left Turns.
That's awesome. There was a quote actually from the Kickstarter page that I wanted to read because it really connected with me. So in describing sort of what Left Turns is, it says, we all can share experiences of love and loss and heartache and random chance encounters, but as an artist, there's this desire to see and create a way to capture moments indefinitely. There's a blind spot within the passion of creation, this risk of losing anyone who is worth spending time with. That really impacted me because it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in that everybody's life is a story, but not everyone can translate that story into a medium where other people can enjoy it and engage with it. How does it make you feel that you have this capacity to be able to, tell aspects of your life story in a format, in a method that will live beyond you. Absolutely, it'll live beyond pretty much all of us. It's a thing. It's real. It exists.
I don't know. Sometimes it feels a little overwhelming. I'm still very underwhelmed that I did this book. Part of me is like, I drew a book. Okay, so what? Part of me is like, why does that make me special? But I guess maybe when it's actually printed and it's in people's hands, it'll feel a little different. But
Sure.
but like the story and like having it done, because I mean, ultimately, in a weird fictional way, it is the story of how I met my wife, and it was one random left turn that we ended up meeting, and so that's kind of the name. And so there is this weird, like, I did read it, like I printed one copy for myself and I read it out loud to my daughter at like bedtime and to my wife, and it was nice to read it out loud because it allowed me to make sure the dialogue felt natural. It's different when you read it in your head and you say it out loud.
Sure.
And but like kind of getting to the end, I got kind of choked up because it is sort of telling their story too in this completely fictional way. So the fact that I have this book that kind of tells their story, I don't know, it is weird. It's emotional, and it is a weird thing to think that like even when I'm gone, somebody's still going to have a copy of this book on their shelf or something, that have the 100 people that'll buy it or the thousands of people that will eventually buy it will read it. I'm hoping, I'll get an email from some random person I've never met, hopefully someday, that reads it and goes, I was bawling my eyes out, reading
Sure.
it. It really hit me in ways, because a large part of it is, it's not just a boy meets girl and finding love kind of story. That is a part of it, but a lot of it is that artistic drive kind of thing. Like what pushes you? That's a huge part of it. Like constantly him trying to work on this comic book, and in a weird, subtle way, I did a comic book. It is part of the Kickstarter. I have a book called Put Some Pants On that I drew 20-something years ago in college, redrew it in the early 2000s. I am re-releasing it as an option in this Kickstarter. It'll be the first time it's been printed in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. But that story was written about me and my friends, and everybody in it was an actual person. And it is a completely absurd story with giant pigs and aliens and monkeys from the future, and is completely stupid, but it's amazing. I love that story to this day. And so a big part of Left Turns was this guy trying to make a comic book about his ex-girlfriend, or he wrote it while he's with his girlfriend dumps him. Do I want to finish this book now that she's left me? So him trying to, like, I put all this time in this book, do I finish it? Him trying to become a comic book artist, trying to, a large part of his relationship falls apart because he spends so much time drawing, and he's so focused on his dreams, they don't share the same dreams, and eventually having to go different directions, and so it's, as an artist, we do have that, like, this drive to constantly create and leave some kind of mark that, not everybody understands, but I don't know. You just feel like you just have to do something, have to create. You have to, leave that legacy behind constantly. You're always reaching for something that's to a certain degree unattainable, but you just want to leave your mark on the world, as small as it might be.
Sure, and I would say that creative individuals, creative endeavors, are probably one of the most lasting impressions that an individual can really leave on the world, and so it's cool that a part of that, because everything you've done creatively in your life is going to live beyond you, but this will not only do that, but it will be your story, so when the aliens come and they're going through all of our media and they find Left Turns, they'll be like, oh, who's this Josh Rouse guy, but I wanted to ask, because you're not just a comic book artist and comic book writer, you're actually a tattoo artist, and you're doing this interview right now from a tattoo shop, and Ray Gun Samurai Tattoo. And I think that's really cool. It's really cool that you are a comic book artist, but that you also do tattoo work. And I wanted to ask, I've never had the chance to ask a tattoo artist this before. So what does it feel like to essentially have a piece of yourself, your creativity, on someone else's body?
You know, I'd always, I don't take that lightly because you are marking people forever. And now that I've been tattooing for 13 years, you know, at some point, for so many years, I've never wanted to be snobby, elitist. I never wanted to turn anybody away. If somebody said, "Hey, I want you to do my tattoo," I felt obligated to do it, no matter what it was. But with COVID and mental health and workload, at some point you have to kind of pick and choose the projects that you take on. And I think a lot of tattoo artists are becoming more like chefs instead of line cooks. You develop a style, this is what you are. But even if I'm doing an Adventure Time tattoo or some weird Japanese demon or some vomiting frog on a pogo stick, I don't know, something stupid, I'm still marking that person for life, and they still chose me, and you still want to give 100% because, you know, I've got at this point so many clients, I don't remember half their names. You know, people come in and, you know, they come and go to a certain degree, no matter how cool the tattoo is. But every tattoo I do, that person's not going to forget me because I mark them. Tattooing is a very intimate thing. You're spending hours with people, with conversations, blood, sweat, tears, body fluids are shared, that kind of stuff. That, you know, it's, tattooing is very bizarre, but it is very cool that you are leaving a non-permanent mark, because tattooing, once that person's gone, my art is gone. But for the people that you touch, you know, at this point, I've mentally, you know, touched thousands of people, you know, like, you know, and to help people with grief and overcome things, whether they lose a friend, a spouse, you know, go through a divorce, just spur of the moment, just want to get something because they got a job promotion. I don't know. You're helping people celebrate and put, you know, like their marks. You're kind of putting the little, you know, you're putting the maps of their life on them, kind of thing. These little, like, I don't know, checkpoints, and I don't know. It is kind of neat, but so I definitely take it pretty seriously, no matter what I do. You know,
This is just me reading into what you said right there. But does it ever become a situation where you kind of build a bond with people where they might talk to you about, like, hey, I want this dog tattooed on me because actually my dog just died, and sort of expressing their grief about things or the meaning behind the tattoo? Does that ever become a point of conversation where they're almost looking to you for some words of wisdom as well as the tattoo?
oh, 100%. You know, like, again, I take it pretty seriously. I know some tattoo artists that are like, I'm not your therapist. It's not my job to help you through stuff. You know, you're getting my art. I want to do what I want to do. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a therapist. I'm not licensed for stuff, but I think tattooing is a lot of my therapy because I can have clients that come in and we can relate to relationships, raising kids, job situations, whatever, you know, and it allows us to get that off our chest. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, relating stories of losing somebody or whatever, you know, happy moments, sad moments. Yeah, you know, I definitely like to try to help people through that. It's something you know, as long as the subject matter is relatively cool, I definitely love doing it. But yeah, first tattoo, whatever. It is always interesting because every client is different. Everybody has a different reason for what they get. And even if you just randomly pick something off the wall, I don't think every tattoo has to mean something per se. I don't think everything has to be like, this is my grandma and this is the day she was born and this is whatever. But if, yeah, you pick that vomiting frog on a pogo stick, that still, you know, that still shows your personality. It shows you're spontaneous, you're a silly person or whatever. There's still meaning in that because it's who you are as a person. So, you know, yes,
Do you have tattoos on you that you got frivolously?
Yeah, I have a few. Not everything I have is definitely deep meaning. I have tattoos for my daughter and I have my dog and stuff, and some of it's just things that I like. Like I've got an arcade system on me because I like video games.
Nice.
You know? I've got Robbie the robot on me because I like robots and old science fiction stuff. But I've got biomech, and sometimes, I mean, I got some. Can't show it off because it's on my leg, but just got tattooed a couple months ago because I was at a convention and it was slow. And I just walked around and picked something off the table. I was like, oh, this guy's got a cool style. It's some weird Black Panther, xenomorph looking Mayan. I don't even know. It's just this weird. It was just weird. And I said, that's cool. Put it on the side of my knee. So yes, it was meant nothing, but but it's also kind of badass in its own way. So.
That's awesome. What would you say is the most interesting tattoo that anyone ever asked you to put on their body, and did you do it?
I don't even know if I could answer that because I've done weird stuff over the years. I've done a lot. I've done a lot of weird tattoos, a lot of personal tattoos. I mean, in my apprenticeship, relatively graphic story, but I didn't tattoo it, but I remember this woman coming in who had been divorced and was now with a new woman and wanted a penis being chopped off by a dagger, so sort of a traditional tattoo, but wanted a penis being cut off with a dagger, and then the dagger was like a rainbow handle, and then I think I ended up drawing it because my mentor didn't draw a lot of stuff. So I designed it for him to tattoo, and it didn't have the testicles in it. But he came in and was like, no, I need to have that in it. So then it was like got it backwards. It was a dagger stabbing the ball sack, essentially. And then she saw it, and I didn't draw the penis. And she was like, no, I need the pee-pee in it. I need the pee-pee in it. She said that a couple of times. And so I had to draw a penis. And that was fairly graphic and weird. But I guess that was just that change in her life, and she wanted to mark that on her. So, but I've seen a lot of weird stuff over the years. But that, I guess off the top of my head, that's one of the weirder ones I remember seeing.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I wanted to ask you a quick question about your relationship with Dirk Manning, because you guys have been collaborating forever, all the way back to Nightmare World and all the way to, Butts and Seats, the Tony Schiavone story and stuff in between. What is it about your working relationship that has allowed you guys to continue to collaborate and endure the test of time?
We live in different states. I don't know. Dirk Manning is like the best cheerleader in the world. He just, like, when he first emailed me 20 years ago, I almost turned him down. He was like, I got this web comic, it was a non-paying thing. And I was like, I don't know. I said, screw it. I'll draw 8 pages. It'll be portfolio stuff. Because at that point I was like, that was my goal in life. I'm going to make it in comic books. I'm going to work for DC or Marvel or whatever. And still kind of putting that stuff together. And that was definitely that transition period of left turns. There's a lot of left turns in that point of my life where I was so focused on my comic book and Dirk Manning that my relationship fell apart. And so that is a big part of left turns.
Wow.
It's that artistic drive. So I met somebody that was a good collaborator. The website was new. I mean, this is like 2001, 2002 kind of stuff. And he was really awesome at just being like cracking the whip, but just like, you can do this. Your stuff is great. Keep going. And then I went through that transition of a breakup and stuff. So he was like, I'm going to give you a fun story to draw. And it just became one after another. And before long, we ended up being like, I don't know, just great pals. We'd meet up once a year in Pittsburgh, do the Pittsburgh Comic-Con for early days when it was borderline going to Staples and printing stuff out, pre any like legit publication stuff. But it was we each drove, like, it was a perfect midpoint for us. So we'd meet up once a year or so. Yeah, we became really good friends. I ended up ultimately being the best man in his wedding. He was a part of my wedding. We've been borderline like peer brothers, over the years, just collaborators, and we just have we work well together. At this point, he's like, you do your thing and I get the script and I just run with it.
I won't ask you for a spoiler, but do you know the next project that you will be working on with Dirk?
I have no idea, honestly.
Okay.
because it's just random. I mean, when tattooing became my full-time career, comic books has really kind of fallen to the side. I mean, because Tales of Mystery was drawn 2006, because it was a web comic initially too, and then it ran for a little bit, and then it got picked up by Devil's Due, and then it was getting printed, and now it's with Source Point Press, and it's still a running comic book. But I mean, I had first writer's refusal on most of the stories he's written, and when Volume 2 came out, tattooing was taking over, and I just didn't have time to do it. COVID kind of re-sparked my comic book interest again. I'm kind of got that fire under me again a little bit to get back into it. I mean, if I do anything, I mean, Butts and Seats was a fun 8 pages. He's got a couple new horror things. He's got that Arn Anderson book coming out.
Yeah.
I think he asked if I was interested in maybe doing some like a bonus short story, maybe a pinup. I'm not 100%, so that's nothing 100% set in stone. But we don't have anything lined up at the moment. Right now I am focusing on getting Left Turns finished. Once that's done, I don't know. I might just do my next weird project and do something that's totally off the wall and just let him be a collaborator again, and kind of phone calls every so often and go, how's this working for you? What do you think?
Yeah,
we'll see. But if he's got a new script, I'm kind of open to something. I wouldn't mind doing something a little weird or another horror story.
and it's funny that you say that, because obviously Tales of Mystery is very horror focused, and that's where I first encountered you, and I love that stuff. And so when I found out that you were doing your own Kickstarter, I was like, oh well, that's pretty cool. Let me see what this is about. And then it's like not what you would expect.
No,
so
not at all.
It's cool that you have those layers to your creativity, to where you can do the horror stuff, you can do all that, but you can also do something really slice of life.
I mean, my personal favorite comic books are probably slice of life stories. I definitely like that kind of stuff anymore. I mean, I love Hellboy and I love Captain America, and I love all that, whatever. I love comic books in general, but I definitely really enjoy that slice of life type of book myself. So I'm excited that I actually managed to pull off that kind of story, because to a certain degree, drawing monsters is not easy, but it's easy. You can make up your own monsters. You can draw a 20-page story of just monsters slamming into buildings and Godzilla and stuff, and that's super awesome, and the story doesn't even have to matter. You're just like, that's a cool book. But writing a story where you're like, the story is the most important part was a fun challenge to take on. So.
That is awesome, and clearly people agree, because the book is doing really well on Kickstarter. As it stands today, you're over $6,000, which is incredible. I can only imagine how good it feels to have that much support.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I gotta make sure I mention, it is being published by Source Point Press. So this isn't just me printing it. It was picked up. We have contracts. Source Point is printing it. The Kickstarter is just like, a lot of the Dirk Manning stuff. It's an early access thing. You get a bonus cover. You get all the exclusive stuff, the prints and things that come with it. But they will be printing it, and it will be available for retail, at some point, once it kind of gets into their queue of projects and stuff. So,
sure.
If somebody's interested, the Kickstarter is a way to get friends and family and early adopters, a way to get it next spring. But yeah, eventually there will be a published, hopefully it's the kind of thing you'll see in a Barnes and Nobles and buy on Amazon and comic book stores and stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Source Point Press right now is just an incredible place to be putting books out through. They've really hit the ground running, and they've been doing a lot of great stuff. So I think this is another project in a string of projects that have been really interesting and good coming out of Source Point Press.
Yeah, Dirk has said a few times, this is not the typical thing that they tend to print, but they have licensing deals with Simon and Schuster and stuff, and they look at this as like, this is our step to kind of have that, like, open up that avenue. Let's tell something that's more mature in a grounded way, not mature in like a Tales of Mystery violence kind of, but kind of open up those doors and kind of get into the type of book that you could get into a Barnes and Nobles and become this book that they can won't sell 10,000 copies on day one, but maybe they can sell, have long legs kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk Turkey, because when this drops, which I'm hoping it can be out on Monday from when we're talking, so there will still be a few days left to go ahead and back this. Not too long, so don't wait, because you do want to make sure that you get this. We don't quite yet know when it will come out through SourcePoint. This is a great way to guarantee your copy, a great way to guarantee that you get it early in advance of everybody else, so you'll consider yourself special. Now, if you want to get this in physical, which again is 365 pages, which is an unbelievable number, and you're getting the Kickstarter exclusive edition, and what's even cooler, again, because this is doing so well, is you get the stretch goals as well. So if you wanted to if you just want it digitally, you can do that for $20. $20, and you have the whole story delivered to you, PDF, and you're good to go. But if you want it in your hands, which 365 pages, you're going to want to hold that bad boy in your hands. You can get it for as low as $40, which you're not doing that with any. What comic are you getting 365 pages of for $40 and all the stretch goals? That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's exciting. The stretch goals are kind of cool. We've got 3 art prints. I had another tattoo artist paint a print for me, so you get this kind of like tattooified version of a print. I had the book comes with a special cover, so one of the prints will be essentially the retail cover, so it's a way to still get that piece of art. But the SourcePoint, or like this Kickstarter cover, is a full color cover. So you get like a special cover. It's only going to be printed through the Kickstarter backers. That will never be reprinted again. So it's like a special edition color cover. The retail cover, because the book is sort of a black and gray, like a blue and gray or brown and gray, depending on the flashback scenes. The cover will kind of keep that tone. It'll kind of just be almost like a black and gray cover. So you get the special print of that. There's 3 prints. We just reached the most recent stretch goal. There's going to be like a little sticker sheet. So with some random stickers that'll come with it. Every copy will come autographed with a little like bookmark sketch on the book plate. So yeah, there's some fun stretch goals. And there's still a couple more depending on how it goes over the last week. We'll see what happens.
Hey, if you are in the market for a tattoo, you can get a tattoo through this Kickstarter for the right.
Well, that one was already taken. Unfortunately, that one went much faster than I expected.
It's gone.
Yes, that was actually. I did not expect that to go so quickly, but yes, that one was taken up within the first couple days.
Wow. Okay. Well, excuse me. Never mind.
But there are still a couple, and the high-end tiers have gone pretty fast. There are still, as of this conversation, a couple tiers to be drawn into the book. So there are still a couple options for that. There is the book, like you said, is $40 by itself in a physical copy with all those stretch goals. And then there are a couple other tiers. My youngest brother has been making music for quite a few years, and I had him do a soundtrack for this book. So there is a special 10-song full score that kind of goes with the sound for the book. And I'm re-releasing that Put Some Pants On book. So it's kind of this neat little, I guess, a $60 tier. You get the full soundtrack and you get a 48-page comic book bonus that will come with some of the deleted scenes and sketches of Left Turn. So it's kind of like, if you want the full picture, you got to get that too. So you get some of the, maybe that kindergarten romance scene will be in there. Some of the some deleted scenes that are not important to the core story, but they're fun little asides to be like, oh, here's some neat little fill in some gaps kind of thing. But
Sure.
Getting Put Some Pants On, that is a big part of what David was working on. So now you get the book that essentially inspired Left Turns and the book that David, I don't know, and all that whole meta sort of.
It's wheels within wheels of meta.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, this is really exciting. I think that if you are on the market for something a little bit different, if you're listening to this, you read comics, you got your Marvel, you got your DC, and that's all great. But there are other things out there, and this is an example of that. A story that is based on life, that takes a real look at what it's like to be a young person with creative passions and drive and pushing that forward. And, this is the story of a man who became a man, who started as a boy and became a man. And I think that's pretty cool. We don't have enough comics like this. So I think that's awesome. I think it's worth investing into for sure.
I think people do.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have. And they will continue to.
That's what we're hoping for. Yeah.
Absolutely. Josh, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It's long overdue for us to do this in an official capacity like this, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And I want to say, again, Kickstarter, Left Turns. Go ahead and hit that website. What's the Kickstarter.com/Left Turns? Is that...
If you go to just leftturnscomic.com, it takes you right. Super simple. You don't have to do Kickstarter, some weird thing. Just leftturnscomic.com takes you right to it.
And we're going to have a link to that in the description, so you guys will be able to just click that and head right on over to the Kickstarter and just give it a look. Just see what we're talking about. And if you can leave that page without your donation, I don't know what to tell you. It's awesome. So go give it a view. Thanks again to Josh. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time, take care.
Thank you very much.